This episode of the Essential Oil Revolution is brought to you by freeoilcourse.com. Sign up for our free 3-day video series that teaches you everything you need to know about essential oils at freeoilcourse.com. If you want to avoid emotional mediocrity, be on time for every present moment. Dr. Jacinta Umpañancana.
Empowerment in education. 2 powerful elements that will help you break free of convention and transform your passion for wellness to a level beyond the status quo. The Essential Oil Revolution, where you're given the tools to supersede an ordinary everyday lifestyle. Inspiring speakers, DIY recipes, healthy living tips, and more. You'll discover it all here. So tune in and get ready for a wellness revolution. For show notes and more, go to revolutionoils.com/podcast.
Welcome to the show, and thank you everyone for listening. My name is Samantha Lee Wright. I am your host of the Essential Oil Revolution. This is the place to go to learn everything you need to know about using therapeutic grade essential oils to live your life to its fullest potential. We're here to help you stay above the wellness line and live a life of radiant, abundant health. You get to hear from inspiring and expert speakers about a whole range of topics. Today's episode, we're focusing on essential oils for releasing emotional patterns. And I had the great honor to talk to Dr. Carolyn Mine, who is one of the founding researchers and thinkers and writers about the topic of essential oils for emotional breakthroughs. Dr. Carolyn Mine is a chiropractor physician who has maintained an active practice for over 25 years. She lives in Rancho Santa Fe, California. In addition to chiropractic, she holds degrees in acupuncture, applied clinical nutrition, bionutrition. She's a fellow of American Council of Applied Clinical Nutrition and a charter member of the International College of Applied Kinesiology. Dr. Mine is an internationally known speaker and has appeared nationally on various TV and radio shows. So it's such a privilege to have her on the show with us today. We're going to be talking about her book, Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils, which she says she wrote to provide a practical way to shift into a loving consciousness. We are all very familiar with the negative side of emotions, but rarely do we know the positive side, let alone how to get there. So that's what we're going to be talking to Dr. Mine about today on today's episode of the Essential Oil Revolution. You're going to get to hear directly from her talk about all the different ways that we can use essential oils to break through these really strong, powerful emotional barriers. We're going to talk about where emotional roadblocks come from. Some of us are really dealing with some things below the surface that we don't even realize are there, such as anger or fear. As a mom, I didn't realize how much impatience and anger I had in me until I had small children, and they have just such a way, as you know, of bringing this stuff up to the surface. So I got some really excellent advice from Carolyn, specifically about anger, and she really breaks it down and gives us some practical steps to deal with these emotions using essential oils and some other really helpful tips as well. She's going to break down how to use her book effectively. We're going to talk about why emotional roadblocks are there in the first place, where they come from, and why essential oils are so effective at helping us break through these barriers. But first, let's pull a recipe from our DIY dugout. This DIY recipe I've pulled from mamanatural.com. It is for lavender linen spray. This classic spray makes your laundry smell amazing and helps to support well-being. What you'll need are 2-ounce dark glass spray bottles, 1 teaspoon of witch hazel, 15 to 20 drops of lavender essential oils, and about 2 ounces of distilled water. Simply add your lavender oil to your glass bottles, then add your witch hazel. Fill the remaining bottle with distilled water, put on your spray cap, shake bottle, and spray. You can spray on freshly laundered clothes or on your pillows and linens just before bed. To submit your own DIY recipe, email us at revolutionoilspodcast@gmail.com. All right, here we go, revolutionaries. I'm here with Dr. Carolyn Mine, and we are talking about her book, Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils, which I'm sure quite a few of you are already familiar with. And I'm very excited to get to talk to her more in depth about it. So, Dr. Mine, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here. We're so glad that you're here with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really commend you on what you're doing with this show.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
So nice to get information out in a way that people are able to access and to be able to refer back to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, me personally, I'm a little obsessed with audio. I just love learning through audio. And I definitely saw that there was a kind of hole there in the audio world as far as the essential oil world went. And I thought, you know what? Why not make aromatherapy for your ears? Let's do it.
That's perfect. And that's actually why I ended up writing the book on releasing the emotional patterns with the essential oils, because there was so much information about the medicinal uses, but there really wasn't anything from the emotional side. And that was a big hole. So that was really the origin of releasing emotional patterns with essential oils.
Now that's so fascinating. Now, what year did you write the book?
In 98.
In 98. So you were really quite a pioneer in that, because I feel like now we see a lot of that talk and that referring to the emotional power of the essential oils. So you really were quite the pioneer in the late 90s with that.
Yeah, that was also an area where, because I met Dr. Young when he had his clinic in Mexico, so that was even prior to forming the Young Living Essential Oils. So that was when he was first getting involved in using essential oils.
Now, is that how you got involved with the essential oils yourself? Was through your meeting of Dr. Young, or can you tell us the story of how you got involved with what you do?
Yeah. I had met Dr. Young when he had his clinic in Mexico, and so then sometime between that, then I had a patient who had told me about one of Dr. Young's trips, and he had gone to Egypt and was going through the various different temples along the Nile. And there's one of the temples that was used for emotional clearing. And so Dr. Young was able to go into that temple and was taken into a room that's not part of the normal tour. And in that room, there was a table in the center of the room, and there were hieroglyphics on the wall. And the hieroglyphics were the emotions and what oil was used to clear the emotions. The procedure was that a person would come in, they'd lie on the table, and then they would have a practitioner at the head and the practitioner at the foot. And as the person was experiencing various different emotions, then they would use various oils to release those emotional patterns. And so when I heard that, I was looking at how do I get a copy of the photograph, because Dr. Young was able to photograph the walls, and not only get a copy of the photograph, but also get it translated. And when I asked that question, I heard a little voice inside my head that said, the same way you get the rest of your information. And what that meant to me was go to the body. And so from there, I was looking at the different emotions that we know from traditional acupuncture, like anger is stored in the liver, kidneys store fear, and worry is more in the stomach. It's actually the esophagus. And because of the emotions that have been around for so long, then time has really proven the validity of the emotion and how it affects the body.
Wow, that's so fascinating. It's interesting. Something we talk a lot about on this show is, or the purpose really behind the show is trying to get people to really take charge of their own health and to start to trust their inner wisdoms a little bit more. And that's sort of what I'm hearing is how you sort of started out and said, well, my answers lie within my body. And if I learn to really listen and to tune in and to trust what I'm feeling and what I'm learning, and you can start to tap into that inner wisdom a little bit.
Exactly, because that's where all the information is. And so from there, I was looking at what's the emotion, Where is it stored in the body, and how do we access it? Because what I was finding with a lot of other emotional work is I could express the emotion, but it didn't go far enough. And you could keep expressing that negative side, and then all you end up doing is creating more of the negative emotion. So the next thing that I was looking at is what's the positive side? Because according to Einstein's theory of relativity, on this planet, everything has its opposite and equal reaction. So when it comes to emotions, we know what happens when we express our emotions, and we know what happens when someone else expresses their negative emotions towards us. So we learn early on that expressing our emotions doesn't work very well. And then when it comes to internalizing our emotions, a lot of the research, according to what was done with some of the cancer research, and Norman Cousins was able to cure himself of cancer by watching funny movies. And in doing that, what he was actually doing was expressing the positive side of the emotion, because the other side of anger is actually laughter.
Now, when you said that you were learning how to access these emotions, so your work, you learn how to access these emotions, but also release them in a healthy way. Is that correct?
Yes, and so what I was finding with acupuncture is you have different emotions that are stored in the body, and you can access those through different acupuncture points. So I use primarily the acupuncture alarm points, but we can also use the points on the hand, points on the feet, even the points on the ears.
Now, can I ask a really dumb question?
Sure.
So, how do you know exactly if you're suffering from an emotional roadblock, or if you have emotional patterns that you need to learn to release?
Is it something that comes up in your life on a regular basis? So, do you find yourself being angry? Are you triggered by different things? Some people find that when they're on the road and another driver cuts them off, then there's the explosion of anger.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be an example of what emotion is there. Look at your relationships. Are there certain things that cause problems in a relationship, tension in a relationship? You can also look at areas of your body. Is there a problem in a certain area? And so that's why in my book, In Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils, I've got a section of where the points are located. So if you have a pain in a particular area, you can go to that area, the drawing, and find what emotion is located in that area of the body. And then once you've identified the emotion, then you're going to look at what oil is used to clear that, and also what's the opposite side of the emotion. So not only do we have the negative side, which we know really well, but also what's the positive side, which for a lot of people is some vague thing out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then even if you do know what the positive side is, the next challenge is how do you transmute the energy from the negative side to the positive side? And the way you do that is by getting above it, looking at it from a higher perspective, which is actually what meditation does. And also that going within, looking at what's here, asking yourself, what do I need to learn from this experience? Why did I attract this? So it is about taking personal responsibility. And then with that, I have an affirmation, which is the positive statement that will allow you to get from the negative emotion to the positive. So, for example, if we take an emotion that everyone is really familiar with, and that's anger, and we look at what's the positive side. And the positive side, and you've heard this many times, that when you're in a relationship, in order for the relationship to survive, you have to know how to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And what laughter does is it dissipates the energy. It was really interesting. I had a man once that I observed who was able to transmute anger into laughter and basically transmute that anger better than anyone else I had ever observed. And so what he would do is he would promise people things, and then he would go back and he hadn't done it, so they were angry at him, and justifiably so. And what he would do is he would turn that energy around to where they would laugh, and it was a genuine laughter, and it totally shifted that energy. It was the most amazing thing I had ever experienced.
Wow. That sounds so powerful.
It's incredible. It's amazing. And so when you look at what causes anger, and what causes anger is, it's like with traffic, and traffic's moving along and everything's fine, and then you hit a roadblock. And then when you've got that roadblock, you have to figure out what to do. So do you take the next exit and get off, or do you stay there? And what will happen is the traffic, just like the other energy, continues to build until the point where there's so much energy, something has to give. And when it does, you have an explosion. If you have an explosion of negative energy, that's anger. And an explosion of positive energy is laughter.
Now, when you said that you use affirmation, is just this one affirmation that you use with all of your clients, or you give to everyone, or does it change depending on the emotion?
There is a specific affirmation for each emotion depending on what the lesson is and what you need to learn. And so in anger, for example, it's like going to the traffic helicopter. And so with the traffic helicopter, what you're wanting with a news report is you want to know, where do I go? And how long is this traffic jam going to last? And so the way it works in our lives is we're getting above the situation. And your affirmation is, my direction is clear, rather than asking a question or staying in the negative energy. And so the affirmation for anger is, my direction is clear. And what that does is it allows you to shift that energy out of anger into laughter, and also look at what you need to learn from the situation so you don't keep recreating the same thing. And then to be able to release the emotion out of the body is by using the essential oil purification. And you want to put that on the acupuncture alarm point for the liver. And the acupuncture alarm point that I have found to be the most accurate is on the nipples. And so a lot of times that's a point that isn't always very appropriate. So there's another point on the hand, and that would be on the palm of the hand. And so usually you've got two lines on the palm of your hand. So if you bend your fingers forward, then you'll notice that lower line, and it's right at the edge of it on the little finger side.
Okay.
And the points are about the size of a $50. So, and they follow intention. So if you're just in the general vicinity, then you've got it and everything's fine.
Oh, good. Oh, good. We're not good at perfectionism over here. So
we don't have to be.
That's great.
And then the other important area is the emotional points on the forehead. So those are the two little bumps on your forehead. So if you go to straight above your eyes, between your eyes and your hairline, you'll notice those two little bumps. And those are the emotional points.
Okay.
So the points that you want to apply the purification oil to would be the acupuncture alarm point on the body. So it's either on the body or on the hand, and the emotional points on the forehead.
And these are maps, I'm assuming that you have very detailed maps in your book, or
Absolutely.
Can people find these online? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Not only are they in the book, also if you go to my website, bodytype.com, there are videos. And there are videos that will show you exactly where the points are.
Oh, that's so helpful. Oh, fantastic. Now I have a practical question for you. What's the quote unquote best way to apply the oils for emotional roadblocks? I hear you talking about a lot about putting them on the different points on the body. Do you recommend that over diffusing or doing both? What would you say?
I like actually applying the oil to the point. And so you can take a drop of the oil and put that in your non-dominant hand, rotate it clockwise 3 times. That activates or wakes up the oil. And then with that, you take this finger that you've been stirring it with and touch the various different points, so either the body or the hand points, and the emotional points on the forehead. And then you can also touch the top of the head. You can take your hand that you've put the oil in and touch the top of your head, the back of your head, and the points on either side. So it's really simple. and doesn't take long to go through and do it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it would take long at all. I mean, maybe, a minute out of your day.
Yeah.
But do you see people struggle often with just making that first step of maybe they're in the middle of anger or they're in the middle of depression or sadness? How hard is it to encourage people to pause and actually apply the oils to help themselves through those roadblocks?
It's really very simple, and it's good to start working with the emotions when you're not in a crisis situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times when you're angry, you're engaged with someone else. And if you have enough presence of mind to pull out the oil and say, for example, you've got kids and the kids come in and the kids are really angry, or someone is directing their anger towards you. So rather than saying something to them about, oh, you're angry, you can start with saying, I'm feeling anger and I want to shift the energy. So then you grab your purification and put a drop in your hand, rotate it clockwise to activate it, and then go ahead and put those points in yourself. Then you can invite them to apply the oil to themselves, or you can do it for them. Or if they're really angry, they're going to tell you no and get really snippy. But that's okay because the human body is the best diffuser that there is. And plus, there's another thing that happens is when your energy field carries more light than someone else's energy field, your energy field goes, swallows up their energy field, cleans it up, and gives it back to them. When I heard that, I thought, great, now I get to be this giant garbage truck. But it's like a candle in a dark room. And so the candle loses nothing when it goes into a dark room. And that's basically what happens when we bring our light into different situations and different environments.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, by putting the oil on the filter points, you don't have to absorb the emotions. A lot of times I'll hear people say, will somebody just dump their stuff all over me? And which is really not true. What I was finding is that if a person is going through a lot of stuff, they're releasing a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I also found that if I had that emotion in me that wasn't clear, then that would be what would trigger me. And so the way out of that was, it's like breaking off the antenna, but it's more about removing the antenna. It's knowing how to immediately shift from the negative side of the emotion to the positive side. And in doing that, you also raise the frequency for them as well. So we're getting to the point of being able to really make a difference in the world, and we can do it in very subtle ways.
It really does all start with you, like Gandhi said, we have to be the change that we want to see in the world. And we can't make a positive impact on the world if we are holding negativity, if we aren't holding the candle, if we're only adding darkness, it's never going to become brighter.
Exactly. And so that's really why I wrote the book, Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils, so that people have a self-help guide. And what you can do is you can take an emotion that you identify with and start with that one. And then you can take that oil. So using purification, for example. And so when we look at purification, then we can also look at the other emotions that are associated with the oil purification. And some of those include fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of violence, fear of seeing, fear of recognition, which can be being recognized, and also negative or erroneous thoughts. So, as you start looking at the emotions that are associated with a particular oil, you can see how there are different aspects, but they're all related.
Now, I want to get into and ask you about the why behind essential oils and why they're so effective and how they work in the body for this. But first, just quickly, I was curious, what's your thoughts on where these emotional patterns come from? And I know there's a lot of different theories out there and a lot of different philosophies, but what's your take on that?
Well, my feeling is that we as people are here because we have various different lessons that we need to learn, and that Earth is really a school, and there are certain things that we need to learn within ourselves. And in doing that, then we're imprinted with a lot of situations and experiences before the age of 5, and it's not necessarily something that's done, it's our perception.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also something that we've decided that we wanted to work on before we even incarnate or come into a physical form. And I've been able to see that when I look at the various different body types. And I discovered that there's actually 25 different body types. It's based on the dominant gland, organ, or system. And this is something that you're born with. And not everyone in the same family is the same body type, although some types tend to run more in families. And so with that dominant gland, then that gland determines the types of foods you crave when your energy is low. It also determines weight gain patterns. There are different physical characteristics. And with that, you'll find different personality profiles that go with that particular dominant gland. So because of that, we have different emotions that we come in with, like different lessons that we have to learn. And I've even done that in the releasing emotional patterns, where I have the different body types and certain emotions that are more of a challenge for certain types than others. Because the reality is we all have all the emotions. It's just some of them are more of a challenge for us than others.
That's interesting that you say that, because I kind of get this idea when we talk about this that we have to release all of the emotions. But then I'm like, well, what does that leave us with? Emotionless beings? No, that doesn't work. So I'm glad that you sort of said that, because now it's sort of put me back in this perspective like, well, it's just all about the balance, right?
It is, and it's knowing how are we able to access the fullness of our emotionality and come from a point of taking personal responsibility and also empowering ourselves and empowering others. So, for example, if anything that upsets you immediately triggers anger, then you're locked into a very negative cycle. But if you know that you can shift that anger into laughter, and by doing that you can look at it from a higher perspective, and you can look at, what do I need to learn from this situation? Where do I need to go? Then it opens a whole nother world, because now you have a choice. You can either express the negative emotion or you can express the positive emotion. And the key is to know what the positive side is, and to be able to shift the energy so that you're not trapped by the negative emotion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I found really interesting is when we look at our various different senses. So we're really familiar with hearing and sight and taste, but nobody says much about smell. Smell is how you access the limbic system of the brain, which is the seat of the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason essential oils are used is because the oils will access the limbic system of the brain. And then by applying the oil to the acupuncture alarm point, you're looking at where that emotion is stored in the body. So then we can really release it. And another part, we want to know, how does the emotion get stored into the particular organ? It does that because it has a similar vibrational frequency.
As what?
The organ carries a similar vibrational frequency to the emotion.
I see. Okay.
And then the oil will connect with the emotion and the frequency. So it's accessing the different entry points. And when we access those different entry points, we can break the cycle from a number of different areas, rather than just looking at something and saying, well, all I need to do is be aware of anger, and then I can immediately stop it and shift it. And that's a way of looking at it from the mental side. But I also found that we needed to access the emotional side, and we needed to be able to access both sides of the emotion. So the more you can feel both sides, the more you're able to release the emotional pattern. And a lot of times we'll also go into memory. So many times an emotion or a situation will trigger an experience that you had in childhood that you may not be consciously aware of. And this is why when we're looking at clearing emotional patterns, we want to connect with that thread. And that thread would be the emotion.
This can sometimes catch people off guard. I've heard people's stories and seen videos, and people will be diffusing. I think Cypress is a really powerful one, that they'll be diffusing and then all of a sudden they are, before they know it, they're sort of on the floor crying because they're remembering some memory in their childhood that was maybe traumatic for them or just bring up a lot of sadness. And, it's something that you might not be ready for, but have you ever had those stories come across you where people have those sort of experiences with the oils without even really knowing that that's what they could do?
Absolutely. And that's why another entry point is an oil. So if you take an oil like cypress and you want to know, well, why would that trigger such an emotional response? And cypress is associated with blame.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at how prevalent blame is, and particularly in childhood, and it may be an experience that you don't even remember, but yet something that can be triggered, or if you feel like you're being blamed for something.
So I'm picking up that there's, these different oils are connected to different emotions, cypress with blame and purification with hate or anger.
Anger,
Anger, okay. And anger is different than hate, obviously. I guess they're kind of similar, but where did this information come from? Where did this oil goes with that emotion? Is that just from experimentation, or was there a more of a scientific approach to it? And I'm curious.
What I did is, again, going to the body. And the tool that I use that I have found to be the most helpful is using the muscle testing.
Mm-hmm.
Because from there, I can ask the body a question and I can get a yes or no answer. And what I would do is I would take an emotion and I would go into it, so go into the feeling area to see what's the other side of it. Because when you look at the infinity sign, and what will happen is you go into, it's China, a lot like the Chinese yin yang. So you can look at the positive side, or with the Chinese yin yang sign, we've got the white, what looks like a big comma, and then in the center is a dot. And the same way with the opposite side, so you have a black comma with a white dot. And what that means is that when you go into an energy, like go into a negative energy far enough, then it will turn and you will see the positive side as it comes out. And the same, so it works both ways. And what I would do is I would go into the negative emotion enough until I was able to connect with what the opposite side was. And once I was able to determine that, I also looked at where is it stored in the body, what oil is necessary in order to release that emotion, and what's the lesson? What do I need to learn from this? And that's where the way out, or the affirmation, came from. And once I would do that, then I would also test that on a number of different people. And if I found anyone where I was not getting the same response, then it's back to the drawing board. So it's there are a number of different checks and balances in how did I come up with the different emotions.
And I know so many people have found so much help using the methods in your book and using the oils for them. Do you ever come across situations where different people need different oils for the same emotion? Or is it pretty much that, these emotions are so universal across the board that the same oil should work on that same emotion?
I have found that the same oil works consistently with all kinds of different people.
Mm-hmm.
And it even works on animals. So it's interesting when you work with issues, and a lot of times you'll find it in the family, but you also, children and animals will reflect the dominant emotion, and a lot of times that dominant emotion is the unspoken tension the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about.
Now, how long does it usually take before the applying of the oils will help with that emotion?
It depends on the person, but a lot of times it's instant. Many times the person will notice a shift immediately.
Yeah, and is that just because of the way that the oils hit our limbic system so quickly?
Yeah, it is. And the other thing, as far as how often do you do it, I encourage people, especially if it's a deep-seated emotion, to use the oils at night before they go to bed. So that means you're not just applying the oil or diffusing the oil, but you're also putting the oil on the different points and experiencing both sides of the emotion and the affirmation. Do that at night before you go to bed, and it allows your subconscious to do a lot of the processing. Then you can do it again in the morning. It sets the tone for the day. And then any other time when you happen to think about it or if the emotion is up. And how long does it take? Again, it depends on how deep-seated it is. Basically, do it until it's no longer an issue or you no longer think about it.
Well put. Well, do you have any recommendations, or do you personally use any essential oils just on a regular basis just to maintain that healthy emotional well-being?
For the emotional well-being, one of the easiest ways when you feel like you've dealt with a lot of the individual ones and there really isn't anything in particular that triggers you, is to use the Idaho balsam fir and use that on the 8th chakra. And that's a way of just balancing your entire energy field. And so I do that with putting the Idaho balsam fir on, again, dominant hand, and then the point for the 8th chakra is about 8 to 10 inches above the head. So you can just put the point above your head. You can touch the emotional points. You can do the other head points if you want. And then just run your hands along your energy field. So it's like outside of your body, about 8 to 10 inches. And you can just run your hands along your sides. And then I also go from the front, so front, back, as far as you can reach. And the affirmation that I use is, it is my intention to return my body, mind, and spirit to the point of perfection now. And I repeat that 3 times because that allows you to clear the various different energy fields around the body. So we've got the physical body, we've got the emotional body, we've got the mental body, the energy bodies. So this is just a real good, simple way of setting the tone for the day.
That's so powerful. I love that affirmation seems to be something that keeps coming up on the show. We had Sarah McFall talked a lot about affirmations on her episode about complaining. And then the Ula guys are on the show, and they as well incorporate a lot of affirmations into their work. And I'm a huge fan as well. I was really resistant to them for a while, but I've been sort of starting out my day with saying affirmations, and it makes a huge difference to just really set that intention and set your day off right.
It does, because the voice we listen to most is the voice, our own voice. And what's that? What's the tape that goes in our head all the time? And if we can replace any of those negative tapes with a positive tape, and that positive tape would be the affirmation. So a lot of times you can pick one affirmation and use that as your default. So if you catch yourself doing any negative self-talk, just pick a positive emotion and replace the negative talk with the positive.
Thank you for that. That's wonderful. Can you talk about your book a little more, just how to use it? Because I think it can be a little bit intimidating at first when people get in, and it's quite big, and so people think it's going to take a long time to learn this stuff. What do you want to explain about how to use your book for people?
It's very simple, and use it as a reference book. And there are a number of different entry points. So if there's a particular emotion that you're aware of, go immediately to the emotional reference. And they're in alphabetical order, so you just pick the emotion. And then from there, it's going to tell you what the positive side of the emotion is. It's going to tell you what your affirmation is, or your way out. It's going to tell you the oil, what the alarm point is, and where the alarm point is located. And so that's the chart that's towards the back of the book. And then at the end of the list where you have the emotions, you'll have another page that tells you exactly how do you apply it and how do you do it. So it's going to show you where the emotional points on the forehead are and the other optional points. The other thing that you can do is if there is a specific oil that you're just attracted to. And a lot of times children will do this. They'll go to your oils and they will pick a particular oil and say, I want this one today. And so you can look up that oil and see what emotions are associated with it. And then you would go back to the emotions again and see where is it located and where are the points. The other way is if you have a pain in a particular area of the body. And one of the things I love about the body is it always tells you the truth. So the body never lies. And if you have a problem in an area, that means there's something going on there. And you want to look at what do you need to do to give that area of your body the attention that it needs. So you can look at it from the body point as well. And there's a section, say for example, you know that you have something going on with your kidney, then you could look at kidney and see what that's associated with.
That's fantastic. Well, I think that your book is just a must own for any essential oil user, and we'll definitely put a link on there for the show notes for this page, which can be found at revolutionoils.com/emotions. So go on there and check out her book. I think that everyone should have it because this is just something that we all struggle with, I'd say, or maybe not all of us, but I'd say most of us, I'm sure you agree, can struggle with the emotional roadblocks in our lives.
It's really true. What I feel is the most important thing that you can give your children is to teach them how to deal with their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you look at employment situations, the most important elements that employers look at is attitude and how people are able to deal with their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else can be learned.
Now, what would you say is the best approach for kids and incorporating the oils and the emotions? Do you when let's say my 3-year-old, he's a 3-year-old or a three-nager, as I like to call him, and he has many emotions. So, when he struggles with his anger, or he'll, get into that anger space very quickly, what's the best approach I can take? Do I act in that moment when he's angry, or is it better to wait and do something later?
Act in the moment. So have your purification where you can reach it. And so when he's angry, then identify the anger and you can just do that. Gee, I'm feeling anger. And pull out your purification, put the purification on you, invite him to put the purification on him, or you can put it on him. And after a while, he'll get to where he'll start going for the purification anytime he feels the anger. And then you want to shift that energy into laughter. So can you get him to laugh about something? Sometimes even putting the oil on and tickling is enough to create the laughter. So it's how do you deal with children? A lot of times it's a matter of diverting their attention to something else. And as a parent, you definitely know that when they're playing with when they pick up the knife, you don't say knives are bad, don't do that. You just give them something else. And that's really what we're doing with the emotions. And what we're doing when we look at that negative side, when he's expressing that negative anger, we want to shift that into the positive, which is expressing the laughter. And then he's going to be able to transmute his anger into laughter. And then once you do that, then you can start going deeper. Well, he's angry. What's he angry about? Did his brother take the toy away from him? Did he hurt his finger? What is it? And then you can start looking at what emotions would be associated with those.
Oh, thank you for that. That's so helpful. I think as someone in the thick of parenting right now with my 3-year-old and my 1-year-old, it's nice to get that practical advice for sure.
It really helps. And then when it comes to diffusing, one of my favorite, especially for children, is peace and calming.
Mm-hmm.
And taking peace and calming, and just take a spray bottle, put some water in it, put a few drops of peace and calming, and use that as the air freshener.
Oh, that's such an amazing oil. It's such a lifesaver in our home. And I know many teachers as well that will diffuse it in their classrooms. So thanks for mentioning that one. Carolyn, we're out of time, unfortunately, because I could just go on about this topic forever. And I love all of these insights that you're giving us. But before we go into our closing questions, are there any last words of wisdom that you want to leave for our listeners?
I just want to encourage people to use the oils. And the nice thing about the oils is there's absolutely no way that you can make a mistake. So just pick up the oil, use it in whatever area you do. And if you've done the emotion once and then you don't remember what it is and you just pick up the oil, the subconscious still remembers it. Even if you can only remember one piece, like you remember one part of the affirmation, or maybe you remember that the other side of anger is laughter and I've got to figure out some way to laugh. Anything that you do starts building those positive pathways.
That's great. I'm so glad you said that. It's so important to not be afraid to experiment and to try and just do something good for yourself, I say. Are you brand new to essential oils or maybe just need a refresher course? Well, we've got just the thing for you. If you go to freeoilcourse.com, you can sign up for a free 3-day video series explaining all the things you need to know about how to use essential oils safely and effectively for a more healthy, radiant lifestyle. It's the perfect course for beginners to take when they're not sure how to get started using essential oils. It covers all the basics. We talk about the 3 different ways you can use your essential oils, how to apply them, and how to know which oils to use for what. Go to freeoilcourse.com to sign up for the free video course today. Well, Dr. Mine, we like to leave our listeners with some really practical advice by sharing with them just some words of wisdom and giving them an inside look into different people's health routines. And I know you already shared your beautiful affirmation routine with the Idaho balsam fir. Are there any other daily health habits that you do that you'd like to share with us?
Well, my typical routine is I will, when I get up and follow nature's call, and after that it's saying hello to my cat.
Oh.
And and it can be a pet, it can be a loved one. What that does is it creates a lot of the positive endorphins. So that's another positive way of just starting your day. And then the next thing that I will typically do is some form of exercise. And so sometimes that can be working with the ball or going for a walk or doing floor exercises or any routine that you want to do. And there's another exercise that I really like that's excellent for setting the tone. It's a very simple exercise. It's called Swimming Dragon. And what you do with that one is just put your thumb and index finger together so you're forming a triangle, and you would put that over the dantian, which is the belly button, and stand with your feet together and then close your hands so your palms are together, and then you're going to move your arms over to one side as far as you can go, and then when you can't go any further, then you're going to go back over to the other side, and you're going to do that as you bend down. And when you finally go down as far as you can go, then you want to go back up again. So it does create that swimming motion. And when you get to the top, then you want your hands above your head, and you're going to stand on your toes, reach up as far as you can, and then collect the chi, collect the energy, and bring that down, and then just pat that into the kidney area, which is that low back area. And then you want to run your hands down the back of your legs, and then the front of your legs, and back up to the dantian, to the belly button area. And you're going to repeat that 3 times. And then with that, when you have the triangle at your belly button, you're going to take 5 statements that are positive statements that you will say. And those statements can be things like, I am young, I am healthy, I am vibrant, I am alive, I am love. And each time you do this, then so I do the 5 affirmations, and then do the physical movements that I described. And then when you come back to that belly button, then you're going to repeat that again. So you repeat it a total of 3 times. And what the swimming dragon does is it activates the internal organs. So it's a massage for all of the endocrine system. And it doesn't take long to do, but it's really good for changing depression. It changes depression quicker than anything else I have found. But it's also a good way of setting the tone.
Wow, you give just such great advice. I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
And finally, what's just one thing we should all ditch completely and replace with something healthier today?
Pay attention to your thoughts. And any time that you notice a negative thought or a negative word or a negative emotion that comes out of your mouth, look at how you want to change it. And just pick something else to replace it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one you can ask your family to help you with. They'll love to do that. But it works both ways. So it's a real good way of being able to change the energy in your home. And you can also branch that out into your workplace, but home is a nice, safe place to start.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mine. If people wanted to learn more about you or get in touch with you, is your bodytype.com the best way to do that?
Yes, it is. And also with that, there's a phone number, so you can always call the office. My office number is 858-756-3704. And then my website, bodytype.com. And you can also go to YouTube and just my name, Dr. Carolyn Mine, and you'll find videos that I've done on how to work with the essential oils on there as well.
Okay, and that's Dr. Mine, M-E-I-N.
Correct.
And I know that on your website you have something really amazing. You have a free monthly newsletter that features the emotional profiles of each of the 25 body types that I'm sure we'll have you back on to talk about some other time. But do you want to quickly explain that for folks?
What I do with the free monthly newsletter, just go to my website, bodytype.com, and sign up. It's a free newsletter. It goes out once a month. And what I do is I feature a particular body type. This month we did gallbladder, and particularly working with the emotional components. Also, the past newsletters are archived on my website. And I also talk about different emotional patterns and essential oils. And not only are we looking at the emotional component, but also some of the other uses for the oils. And then a lot of times I'll add another article of some kind that's just general information.
Well, thank you. Well, we will be sure to put all of these useful links and resources on the show notes for this page, which will be at revolutionoils.com/emotions. Well, I just want to thank you, Carolyn, for coming, taking the time out of your day to be with us here on the Essential Oil Revolution and sharing all of your amazing knowledge with us. I really, really appreciate your time with us here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. This was wonderful. This was fun. So I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Well, revolutionaries, thank you again for joining us here today on the Essential Oil Revolution. I'll be sure to put a link to Carolyn's book on the show notes for this page, which will be at revolutionoils.com/emotions. You can find the show notes for all the past episodes on the podcast page as well at revolutionoils.com/podcast. Peace out, revolutionaries. Keep on learning, keep on discovering, and most importantly, keep on treating yourself well. You are worth it.